Welcome to Two Humans Talking, the podcast that discusses what it really takes to be healthy and stay healthy in today's modern fast-paced world. I'm Tiffany Simms, your holistic wellness coach, and today I am here with Dinalynn Rosenbush, and we are going to have such a fun conversation about playing and how to manage yourself through the different seasons of life and using your past experiences to help propel you into the future, both the positive and not so good moments of that path that we can learn from. And so, Dina Lynn, I would love for you to one, thank you for being here. And two, I would love for you to share with our beautiful besties here on the internet who you are, what lights your soul on fire, and like what makes you you.
Huh, wow, that's a lot of question. First, I want to say, Tiffany, thank you, thank you, thank you for inviting me to come onto your podcast, and I am
You're
thrilled to
welcome.
be here, and I'm very honored to be here. So, starting with that, that is the truth of the matter. Now, you asked two very loaded questions: what has happened in my life, and what makes me me? Oh, where do I begin? So, what's happened in my life is a summary. Let's see if I can do that shortly. I grew up in Minnesota. I went to college to be a speech pathologist. I did that for about 30 years. I got terribly sick with Lyme disease after being bit by a
Mm.
tick. And then, after a time of debilitating illness, I decided to start my own business. And now I help parents know how to help their own children develop speech, language, and listening skills. And it's
Oh,
super
that
fun.
is epic.
Yeah. So there's my nutshell version of life.
I love that. And just because I am just like a people person and I
Hmm.
like getting to know humans for the humans that they are, where would I find you on like a Saturday? What are you doing on a Saturday that just truly lights your soul on fire?
Oh, well, I love being with my grandchildren. That's one thing. They are 1 and 3. They're
Oh,
fabulous. So that's super fun. But I also love being with my kids, and they are adults now. So that's even a different kind of super fun. And if I was to be on my own, I would probably be out in the woods or out in the lake on a kayak, camping and paddling and being outdoors doing something. Anything outdoors, in the hammock, running around playing, whatever it is.
oh,
It
we
would
would
be
have
it
such a
would
good
be
time.
outside.
I love
Mhm.
kayaking as well. The
Yeah.
water is very grounding and soothing and just
Yeah.
centering for me.
Yep.
And I'm very fortunate in that I like my backyard here behind my desk. I looking at a lake and I have a river at the end of the street. And so like I'm very fortunate in that. And so being outside
Nice.
and near the water is like my happy space too.
Yeah. Yeah. The word ground was my word for like the last 2 years to
Ah,
get grounded. And it's it's amazing how we can get in a Twitter, just get busy with our life, get busy with our thinking and our processes and our doing. So we kind of lose that centeredness. And I find the same thing when I get outside. It's like everything calms down, everything slows down, and clarity happens.
mhm. I have my best ideas when I go out and take a walk by the water.
Hmm.
Like my best ideas, the things that have been worrying me, like what I find that when I get all amped up or I'm spinning and I'm just like getting myself flustered, it's like Tiffany to go for a walk. Take 5 minutes, go for a walk. And always I leave my phone in the house now. I don't take it with me anymore. And I'll grab the dog and just after like 4 minutes, all of a sudden everything is very clear. What my right next steps for integrity and the thing that I was working on become very apparent.
Well, I think that's really impressive that you can do it in 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes me like an hour, like just keep on walking, keep on walking. Depends how amped up I am.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
The conversation, sometimes I joke like I wish that I could like, and I'm sure it's coming because I know Apple just put a patent in to retrofit like our AirPods to read our brainwaves, but
Oh
I've
my
been
gosh.
joking for a while like I really wish there was a way to like plug in and extract the fully formulated thoughts I've had while I'm out walking, because when I come back to go write them out, because they were great,
Yeah.
great thoughts, great words, like a whole thing had happened, and I sit and I'm like, what was it? Like it's gone. And so I joke that I wish someone could read my brain, take my brain waves and transcribe that transcript so that I could like go put epic stuff out back out into the world and it not just be in that like fleeting moment while I was on a walk. You know, something else that you said about the just like that grounding being your word for this year, that life gets really busy and really hectic.
Hmm.
My word this year was connection, because
Oh,
I had found that my life had been spinning really fast. And I know you had used the phrase hamster wheel before we hit record today. And I felt like my life was, I was on that hamster wheel. I was intentional about a lot of things, but I felt really disconnected from human beings
mm,
because everything had become so digital,
yeah.
blessing and a curse in disguise, like at the same time. And so like I really got intentional about like making genuine connections and getting to know people for who they were this year to help myself slow down and be present in my life in a different way.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And it makes such a huge difference when your connections are in depth, not the surface kind of connections that we can make digitally, but rather the connection like these deeper conversations like you
Yeah.
have with people, but also when you're sitting in a room face to face with someone or you're out on the path walking with somebody, but your human physical experience is in their presence. That energy, that understanding, that connection is really invaluable. You can't put a tag on the price of that, the value of that.
Yes.
It is so important. It changes you.
It really does. And so it's like those questions like I asked you earlier, like what lights your soul on fire? Like, yes, we're here digitally and our besties are listening to us, whether they're on their couch or in the grocery store with us in their
Mhm.
ears. Like that connection piece of just pausing and getting to know another human and really seeing them.
Yeah,
And then when you can, being able to share the same air as someone else was
that's a
something we
great way to
used to
say it.
take for granted, I think,
Hmm.
pre-pandemic. And now like it's interesting to me that when I get how excited I get when it's like, oh, I can like touch someone tangibly and breathe the same air as them and really experience a space with another human, and it just feels playful and fun.
Hmm. That's so true. And it's interesting how you bring that up because that is one of the things that I didn't mention in our conversation prior to recording. That currently, as I'm starting this business, I'm finding I'm spending a lot of time in my basement office here. I'm spending a lot of time at the screen, and I feel also disconnected in a way that has never really happened before. And so I've been intentionally blocking time off of my calendar to have white space. And then in that white space, I'm looking in the town like, where's a street dance? Where is, things that where I will go where people are that do things that I enjoy doing. Because my life as my children have gotten older and the grands live a little ways away, not far, but little ways. And so, my life isn't spinning around me the way it was when I was raising children, but rather it's spinning out of my house, out over there somewhere. And I have a new experience now of a loss of connection
Mm.
that is that physical experience with people in your space. So this is brand new, really, for me.
I love this actually. So, because I think that's really relatable. Maybe not the starting a business piece. I think that is very unique to a group of people like you and I. But
Hmm.
that, like, the world has changed how we show up for how we earn our income and our employment's changed. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of people, a lot of women working from home, doing it all while also working from home. And so there's like that blessing of not having to commute back and forth, but I think there's also like that isolation
Yeah.
of not interacting with people when you go to grab your lunch out of the fridge or go to refill your water bottle or running into someone on the way to the bathroom. And so I think
Yeah.
a lot of women are experiencing that right now. So,
When
oh, go ahead.
when I first started working from home, and I had been working in a school system, so that's a busy, buzzy place of lots of little people and teachers, and it's people filled, and that was great. But when I first came to my home, I thought, oh, I love this because I experienced the opposite, the quiet. I experienced productivity without interruption. I experienced something that was missing in that other setting. So I thought, this is great. And then over time of doing this, I am thinking, holy cow, I'm starting to miss people. And
Kind
I'm
of
starting,
lonely over here.
it is starting to feel lonely. And that is a new experience for me to feel lonely. And so, yeah, the idea of getting a job that is a people job is certainly something that's been in my mind just because I'm starting to feel like I need social in a way that it was poured on me. Like when you work with a lot of people, it's poured there. And when you get home, you're like, whew, quiet.
Don't talk to me. I need a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think we have these phases in our life where we just experience something new and then we have to learn, oh, that's the opposite side of the pendulum swing. Now I have to adjust
Now I have to
differently
find that
again.
middle ground
Yeah. And adjust in a way we didn't expect
intentionally,
to. Hmm.
with intention, like intentionally
Exactly.
finding what I want my middle ground to look like, knowing what both extremes feel like. Where
Yes.
do I feel comfortable in that?
Right.
And that intentional piece of, like you mentioned, like that white space. What would you say to someone who's in the heart of their parent phase and they're trying to connect with their kids? They're trying to heal their own generational stuff
Hmm.
like their parents did. It just wasn't as public as it is now with social media. Um, while also trying to find where their pendulum lands, where it works well for everyone. Like, can you walk through what that might look like or what you might share with them?
Yeah, I would. I could. I can. And I think that the first and foremost thing we have to do is be compassionate with ourselves and be gracious with ourselves. Because when you have kids at home, no matter whether they're little and they're needing that constant physical kind of attention, or when they're teenagers and they need the emotional kind of attention, there's there's a lot going on with your kiddos, and of course the kids need what they need. And and especially when kids are small, we tend as parents to put ourselves on the back burner. And I know that moms are especially guilty of this. We don't give ourselves space to be able to feel what we feel until after the kids are in bed, after the chores are done, after we pack the lunch for the next day's work, after you
What does
fall in.
that really feel like and look like for the mom who's in it and may not even in the moment know she's doing it? Like, what would be a really good example of that? Maybe from your own experience.
From my own experience, it would be that, okay, so the you get home from work and the kids are already home, and there's some kids doing homework and some kids squirreling around, and you need to immediately get on making supper. And then you've got a spill and you've got an argument and you've got a dog running around. You need to clean something up and you get everything at the table. And while you're doing this, you're thinking about, I want to learn XYZ. Maybe you want to learn about finances. Maybe you want to learn about energy and personal growth. Maybe you want to, like different, all the different personal growth things, like I guess finances is one of them, like there's so many. And then you do the next thing, and then the kids have a question, and then they have to go to bed, and you've got babs and you've got brushing teeth and you've got whatever it is that you need to do. And it completely fills the evening. And then when finally they get into bed and you send them to bed and they wander back out and you send them to bed again. And then you're like, okay. And you sit down and you've got about 10% of energy left. And there just isn't much capacity because you're tired. And so then, after you sit for just a little bit to kind of gather yourself together, you think, do I have time to learn what I want to learn? And you think, yeah. And you get up and you turn around and your eyes fall on the kitchen sink and you've got
Mm,
dishes to do. And that reminds you that you need to prepare for tomorrow.
mm.
And so then you get the dishes cleaned up, and maybe you've got a load of laundry to fold, and maybe you've got whatever else you need to do. And then that happens, and then you have about 5% left. And at that point, you say, I think I will listen to something while I fall asleep. But you fall asleep about a sentence or two into whatever you're going to listen to. And you wake up realizing, I missed it. And if you're not careful, you'll do what I did, which is you'll think you failed.
Mm.
I think that there needs to be this compassion when you have the kid phase going on, that you are compassionate with yourself and you realize that your growth and your creative time will come, but it's going to maybe come only if you get to schedule it in, if you're going to do it currently. I was a single parent, so a lot of that wasn't an option. But if you can schedule in a time to be able to have a creative space, to be able to let go, to be able to think about something else. I also found for me that it wasn't going to happen if it was in my house. I'd swear my house had a voice that was audible. Clean this, prepare that. The house screams at you. So, in order to have space to go out to the woods, if that's what you like, to go to a ceramics class, to go dancing, to go someplace where what you get is
Mm-hmm.
this creative and different outlet than anything you can do at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the self-compassion and the removal of yourself would be the two big things that I would say could facilitate a mom or dad being able to find that balance. I know for me, I did not find it until my kids had moved out.
Mm. I I want to pause on something you share. You're like, you might have to get it, put it on the calendar for it to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say you have to put it on the calendar for it to happen. Because in my own life, and I don't have children,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty much the only person I have to worry about other than the dog. Like my partner's self-sustainable, you know what I mean? Like he's a
Mm-hmm.
grown man. I don't have to like juggle that. Well, that's a lie. But
Truth
I
be told.
digress. I digress. We're working in that area of like you
Mhm.
have to communicate, and him thinking my
Yeah.
calendar is like unnecessary. But it's like if it's on my calendar, that means it's important to me. And if
Yeah.
it's not on my calendar, it's not important and it's not going to happen. And
Yeah.
so I only put things on my calendar that I need to do and want to do, both of them, and they have
Mhm.
to fill the future vision of my life. They have to fill one of my buckets. Otherwise, it says no. Thanks for thinking of me, but no, thank you.
Mm.
Like that's not for me. I'm over the years of saying yes to things that were meant to be a no.
Yeah.
Long over those. But it's like if it's important, it goes on the calendar, and then that time is respected the same as you would for a doctor's appointment when your kids need shots.
Sure.
Like, and so I really would encourage kids or no kids, creative time or learning time or gym time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
start using your calendar to your advantage. And it's very easy to start, especially when you start color coding things, to be like, ooh, things are real heavy in this area. And I need to like rework this to make it work for us.
Yeah. What you're saying is absolutely important. And I will admit that is new for me because my life had been driven from the outside and I allowed it that way. I didn't know anything different. I didn't know that I was that empowered to make my own choices until more recently in the last years. Because again, working in the schools, your schedule is put there. It is pretty rigid. And as a speech pathologist, you have 20-minute intervals and you're switching what you're doing all day long. And then when you come home as a single mom, the house is my responsibility. The kids were my responsibility. And it always seemed like there was things from the outside that I couldn't control, but I was
Mhm.
responsible to take care of. And it wasn't until I had the brain space, the quietness of, okay, the kids are on their own, that I started to think, oh, I can make these choices. So that's fairly recently in my life.
I
It's
love
within the last
that.
10 years.
I love that you share that because I think I have similar, like I may not have the kid pressure,
Hmm.
um, but I do have a very similar experience in that, I worked for a Fortune 250 company. I was an emerging leader. I was a nuclear chemist for 12 and a half years, putting power on the grid, keeping your lights on. It's a very high stress, high demand, male dominated industry. Everything was due 2, 3 months ago. Everything was a
Uh,
fighting moment. And I had one of those wake up moments one day where I was like, I can't keep doing this.
mhm.
And it was long before I pivoted into realizing, like, into starting a company. But it was like that, like, all right, there's certain things in my day that obviously I don't get a say in. Like, I'm employed, employment said I do these things in exchange for a paycheck. But there are a lot more things that I have control over that I wasn't accepting before. And then I was playing the victim. And I remember the first time I recognized that I was in that I was playing the victim, and that was a really hard day because it
Yep.
was like my body was like trying to resist it because no one wants to be told that you want to be right in the things that you feel and that it's everyone else's fault and no one understands. And if they had just understood what was already on my plate before they gave me more nonsense that was stupid, like how dare they? And then all of a sudden it was
Hmm.
like, I sat with that for a really long time. It was like months of messy, of like that back and forth. No, I'm right for feeling this way versus that, like, no, like you allowed this to happen because there's so much more control than you're giving yourself credit for. But that takes responsibility, it takes leadership in yourself, it takes you being intentional. And I think
Yeah.
we all have that. And so I had to get really honest with myself about the things I was allowing to happen versus taking control of. And one of the first things for me was getting intentional about my calendar at work
Sure.
and actually blocking off time to work on those projects. Because how was my boss supposed to know that that free time in my calendar I had mentally allocated to work on a project that I've been carrying for 3 weeks when they go and schedule something? They just saw an open block. And so I started getting really intentional about putting the project that I was working for and time blocking calendar appointments for things like that. And suddenly my boss was only asking for my time when it was like worked within my calendar. Or he would start coming to my desk and saying things like, hey, I know that you had something on your calendar at such and such time. Are you able to reschedule that? I need you for X, Y, and Z. And then it opened up lines of communication. And suddenly my calendar felt less fiery and less reactive and more like I actually was calm and grounded in my day. And then that bled into my personal life where I was like, why am I not doing this for the things that I want in my life too? And so it's like a
Yeah,
skill,
absolutely.
and skills we can learn,
I'm still learning that skill.
right? But there's probably other skills that you've already mastered
Mhm.
that you probably were not good at in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then other skills that you have been great at forever that you are able to share with other people to become masters of that skill for themselves.
Oh, of course. You know, you talk about the victim thing. I remember too when suddenly, fairly suddenly, realized, oh, that's a victim mentality. And I was like embarrassed in front of myself. Like I didn't want to admit it to myself, and I felt
Yeah.
like I didn't want to admit it to anybody else when it just suddenly came to me and I realized. So I thought, oh, I have to get out of that thinking
And
before
it's like,
anybody knows, as if it wasn't obvious to everybody that understands it.
they were in their own crap. They didn't notice either. But
It
it's
was
almost like once
yeah,
you realize it, you can't unsee it. And then you're
right.
like, well, shit.
Mhm.
Like sometimes you're like, I wish I did. Can we just go back to where I was oblivious to this thing? Because that was just like autopilot was kind of nice, but I know this will be helpful, but like, dang it.
Yeah. The time that it became super apparent to me was in this moment of realizing that I had a part in how ill I was after being bit
Mm,
by that tick. So I get bit by the tick. I go to the doctor. They say it's not Lyme disease. 14 months later, it's in my brain and spinal cord. It's late stage, and I get my diagnosis. Then I had this long journey, long journey. And in that long journey, I started doing the reflecting because I spent a lot of time in bed and I listened to audiobooks and I realized I had been wishing for a break for a long time. This wasn't the kind of break that I wanted.
like I
But
asked, the universe gave me something.
exactly. And I started thinking, what else have I been thinking that drives some of my other experiences? What else have I been wishing for that actually is present because of being this sick and in bed? And I thought, holy cow, I really have to think differently. I have to change my thoughts. I didn't like I had no idea that this wasn't put on me. And I think to some degree, you know, things happen that we don't necessarily call in, but at the same time, the realization that I was in the state that I was in, I had some play in was was stunning. Absolutely stunning. And that needed to change. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, based off of everything that you've learned through your parenting adventures, through your while navigating a career, and now on the backside, what would you tell your younger self who's in it now that you are sharing now with the parents and stuff that you work with?
Oh, well, the first thing would be just like you said, manage your calendar from a forward momentum place. Choose what you're going to put in your calendar, and then live that way. So choose forward. Now, I honestly think that it's really going to be difficult for a young mom to do that because little kids are screaming and they fall down and they need your attention right now. So it's really difficult to figure out that piece. But this time blocking, like you're saying, okay, so this is home time. I will be present for whatever they need for this block of time. Now I'm at work, like you said, I'm working on a project. So I'm going to block this out so nobody interferes with this particular time. And then this is my work with people time. And, so people can see what your schedule is basically like. And then the other thing is what I had already said about grace, being gracious and compassionate with yourself, because it doesn't flow nearly as smoothly as we're talking as if it would, because it doesn't. It is a messy thing. And then I would add on to that to absolutely find the ways to laugh. Find the ways that play and movement gets into your world where you are actually in spaces of exploration, experimentation, creativity. And maybe that's going to be able to be with your kids. Maybe it's going to be with your colleagues. Maybe it's going to be in that quiet space at work where you're creative. But you must put in the play that feels like play. And so for you, maybe it's going to be spinning pots on a wheel. And for me, maybe it's going to be going dancing. Like it doesn't matter what it is, but it is critically important to not nix play. And in our
What does
world,
play actually give us when we focus on being playful? What is that giving us back? Like, how is that helping us get through our day and manage life a little differently?
the amount of impact that play has on us is absolutely huge. It goes down to your viscera. It goes down to the core of who you are. It changes your blood pressure. It
Mm.
changes your brainwave activity. It changes your energy. It it causes you to become more grounded, like we talked about. The problem, I think, in our society here in America is we associate that word play with Legos and frivolousness and things that don't matter. But we have to zoom out and realize that play is how we were created to be. The very nature of how we learn is by experimenting, which is part of play. When we observe and we're curious, curiosity is part of play. So when we can embrace that word and get into those feeling tones of, I am loosely attached to this thing, and I am going to work my way through with joy. And if I fail at it, it's just my learning. It's part of, where you don't see it as failure. You see it more like, oh, well, that didn't work. What's next? How should I try it differently? It's that kind of attitude and mindset that comes along with play. And one of the things that I teach parents in my program is how to get into that mode in your mind with your children when they don't obey. Because if we can be in that space in our mind, we end up with much different outcomes with our kids too, which alleviates some of our stress too. But this idea of play and creativity and exploration and developing your capacity to experience things not working as the process and learning something else that didn't work the way you expect. To get in that lightness, I now know that it is absolutely critical. And when you get good at it, I believe you can take it into every area and have the spirit of playfulness, have the mindset of playfulness come with you.
That is so beautiful. And what would you say to the mom who's like nodding internally, like, yeah, 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 who has time for that? I don't have time to play. My life is on fire. I'm
Mhm.
on the hamster wheel. Like, sounds nice, but what are you talking about? Like, what do you offer to her as we wrap up today?
Oh, that is a good question. So when you're a mom and you've got all this stuff going on around you, our attitudes so often, and I speak this from experience, and I think that my attitude was wrong. It was, I need to get this done. I need to move on to the next thing. It's about productivity. It's about get the kids in bed. It's about rightness. Did I do it right? Am I good enough? My value is in my performance. And if my kids do well, I'm an okay person. Play is like an attitude that is contrary to that judgy, not good enoughness attitude, not worthy attitude. But play is like the opposite of that, because it doesn't question worthiness. It doesn't question enough. It moves forward with this idea that, oh, this is where we're at, and this is what we're doing, and this is what's next, and this is how far along I got, and I'll pick up tomorrow or when I have a chance, because there's a calmness that comes to you. So it's not about learning something new per se. It is learning a new frame. And my business is called The Language of Play. And the language piece is the voice inside yourself that you talk to yourself with. So what do you say to yourself about yourself? That attitude is either in that zone that I'm calling play mindset, or it is not. It is in more of a judgy, performance-based, not good enough worthiness problems. And I see it. I mean, nothing is really polar, but I kind of see it that way. Either we are in the freedom zone of play, where we allow ourselves to be, and we allow ourselves to just get as far as we get. And we allow ourselves to say, I'm sorry, when we don't do right and we lose our cool with our kids. Or we're on the other side of that pendulum where we're saying, shoot, I blew it again. I failed. I'm not good enough. I thought I was going to do this better next time. I'm just not, in whatever way we judge ourselves. So we can go back to the idea of being self-compassionate and call it simply that, or we can step into the deeper hole of talking about it. And when we go into that deeper hole, our language is a mindset of play, and our health, our brain, our blood pressure, everything works better when we get into that different state. And that is what I'm calling the language that goes with play for adults. And that, if we can embrace it as a mom, it's huge. And now I'm able to.
And I love that. I think being able to share the things we've learned with other people so that they can get through the suck faster than we did is such a gift. And so thank you for being out there and being brave and sharing what you've learned to be true and the lessons that you wish you could go back and maybe tweak a little bit to have learned them faster. And so, Dinalynn, how do people connect with you? Where do they find you in the world?
Thank you for that question too. The Language of Play. And so I have a website, thelanguageofplay.com, that is not quite up yet, but it will be soon. And my email is hello@thelanguageofplay.com. And my podcast is The Language of Play. So it's all the same.
Find her. Go find her in the world. Go listen to her podcast if you resonated with this idea today. And even more so, if you struggled with the concept of being able to even create space and time to be playful, definitely go check out her podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us today.
Thank you.
And with that, that's Two Humans Talking. I'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and actionable as I did. If you're ready to stop just surviving and start living a life where your health, your relationships, and your career work together without the burnout, then it's time that you join the Modern Women's Society. Inside, I'll walk you through my life GPS system, a proven blueprint to help you have it all while thriving. You'll gain tools, coaching, and the kind of clarity that brings big dreams to life without the stress, overwhelm, guilt, and shame that the modern woman is used to. We're going to create a life where you feel energized and excited to wake up every day and fulfilled when you put your head on the pillow. Click the link below to learn more and join countless other women who are redefining success on their terms. Because the life you've dreamed about is closer than you think. I'll see you on the inside.